Alright, so new selection pack just dropped, and World Championship qualifiers on Master Duel are right around the corner. So, perfect time to do a new meta tier list. And I'm going to try to cover, quite a bit of decks, as you can see here, but obviously I'm not going to be able to cover every deck, so if there's one deck that I didn't mention here that you think should be, let me know in the comments, I'll try to respond. But at the same time, this is going to be a tier list for the World's Championship qualifier event, not regular ladder, so I'm going to be a bit harsher with my deck evaluations, because if you're really taking like Worlds seriously or trying to qualify for Worlds through this event, and you're trying to grind stage 2, then you really need to be much more selective with your card choices than you normally would be for like just playing on regular ranked Master Duel ladder. And also, after 3 weeks, feel free to come back to this video and just laugh at me at all the places where I got wrong. So, first off, let's start with...
Oh my god, yes, I love Ray. I would die for Sky Striker A's Ray. This support card is going to change my life, and it's going to be the best card ever. Bat chest, right?
So is this support going to be the best card ever? I mean, if you want to die for Ray, be my guest. It's just that, like, the concept of Sky Striker pure as a deck is, it's a deck that's probably better off going second than going first, which has its problems, being that, I did a video on how, terrible going second is in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sky Striker has an additional problem of, you can get all the board breakers you want. You can have all the tools for board breaking. The links probably help with board breaking, even though they're not individually, none of them are actually better than just SP Little Knight, but, that's beside the point. But if you're not, Sky Striker can't really kill you or OTK when going second, because you have to play through a board. So even if you do break every single board, it almost doesn't matter, because your opponent always searches follow-up, Snake Eyes searches follow-up, Fire Kings has follow-up. All of these decks, they're just gonna, OTK you on the next turn after you break their board even. So it's like, yeah, I don't, man, I don't trust Sky Striker. Unfortunately, feel free to play it. There are worse decks on this list, but, Valmonica. So, Valmonica, it's too fair. Like, this deck sets up maybe like 2 pops or a bounce, and like you can like flex into Baguska, which is cool, but Baguska isn't like a unique trait that only Valmonica can do. I like what they did with this deck, because this deck is basically, it's super budget. I think it has 1 UR, and it basically, if you're rolling for the pack anyways, and you're trying to, like, pull all the Fire King stuff, then you're probably gonna just have Valmonica for free anyways. So, there's, why not play this, right? Like, there's no opportunity cost. It's just, I don't think this deck is really all that great. But, I mean, the cards are cute, I'll give it that. Pendulum. This is, like, the new Gate Magician thing. Like, this is just gonna be put into the Wombo combo Pendulum Soup combo deck that ends on like 5 negates, turn 1 going first. But is that really the issue with this deck? Like, the actual issue with all these Pendulum decks is that, 1, we're in a Maxi meta game, and 2, that means you have to put in 9 cards in your deck just to counter Maxi, and you already have to play 20 plus Pendulum monsters just for the deck to be consistent. So how much room for non-engine do you really have? Like hardly any, right? I mean, you can go first, you can play through multiple hand traps possibly, and then end on an OTK or like an FTK board essentially, like multiple disruptions, multiple negates, but this isn't the only deck that can do that. But unlike other decks, this deck can't really have much room for, Pendulum decks like these don't really have that much room for the much defensive cards or going second cards, and it's not like they're particularly very good at going second, meaning that you need multiple cards to play in the board. So yeah, let's put it somewhere here. The order of these 3, you could, I guess you could argue. I don't know if you'd rather have a mid going second deck, mid combo deck, or a mid-range deck. It's up to you. So here's the juicy stuff that everyone cares about from this set, is the Fire King stuff. And I put in 2 separate categories here. One is Ponix and one is Volcanics. This basically separated from Fire King or Snake Eyes and just the straight up Fire King, because you can play Fire King in like those two separate ways. And first, talking about Fire King Snake Eyes, so a lot of people are going to be thinking that this is the best deck undisputed, which I'm not sure about that. Based on like OCG and TCG results, first of all, this deck has done fuck all in the TCG. Every time people think that this deck is going to be good, they banned the Synchro Monsters in TCG, and this deck still has like barely done anything in TCG. I don't know about that. In Master Duel right now, we have one Wanted and one Ash, and that's where I'm questioning about Fire King Snake Eyes, is the original Sinful Spoils dilemma. Because when you have 3 Ash, you can just guarantee to have Ash all the time. Then it's simple. You Ash, you get Poplar, Poplar gets OSS, and then OSS gets your Ponix, and then you can just do your engine right there. With just one Ash, there's gonna be a lot of times where you lead with like Diabellstar, or you lead with Ash, or you lead with like original Sinful Spoils, and you have to decide between what you get out, because you probably don't have you might not have access to Ash as well, being that it's limited. So what are you gonna original Sinful Spoils out from your deck? Are you gonna summon out Snake Eyes Ash, or are you gonna summon out Ponix to get your Fire Engine? It's because you can't get both if you don't open with Ash, obviously. And I guess going second, I guess if you lead with Diabellstar, it's okay, because then you can get Snake Eyes Ash with original, and then Ash searches Ponix, and then you can normal summon the Ponix and go that way. But then you don't have access to the Poplar, so then your Snake Eyes engine is a lot weaker. You don't have the free material to send for Flamberge, and it's just kind of weird. So I'm like iffy on just how Fire King Snake Eyes is exactly gonna work based on the limitation that we have in Master Duel, because you do have to run a small Fire King pack. You have to run like 4 to 5 cards, but because you're not playing pure, you're playing Snake Eyes, those Fire King cards are just kind of bricks in your engine, because you want to start with Snake Eyes cards, not Fire King cards. And just drawing the Fire King cards by themselves don't do a whole lot if you don't have access to your Snake Eyes engine in that case. But then you have to also validate that if they're bricks, but then you can't even access your Fire King engine all the time with Snake Eyes, just because your Snake Eyes engine also is limited. So then, is it worth it to run those bricks to maybe just half the time access your engine, but half the time you can't even access your Fire King engine? So I don't know, but at the same time, Kieran is a ridiculous card, and Kieran lets your Ash, your Snake Eyes Ash, and all your other cards dodge hand traps like Imperm and other target negations, so that alone might just be worth it anyways. But yeah, I'll tentatively put this in tier 1 right now. And for the pure Fire Kings, so pure Fire Kings is a lot different. Volcanics is a lot more important in pure Fire Kings than it is in Fire King Snake Eyes. And yeah, the Fire King Snake Eyes is like a bit of a different style of a deck. It has a lot more room for non-engine, because you don't have to fill it with Snake Eyes and Diabellstar cards, and you can do all your Fire King plays, but obviously you don't have access to the Snake Eye plays. And obviously TCG doesn't have Volcanic, so if we want to go by IRL results, then we have to look at the OCG. And yeah, pure Fire Kings somehow just ain't doing so hot compared to Snake Eye Fire King. Like, Snake Eye Fire King, 41 tops. Pure Fire King, one singular top. So I don't think pure Fire King is going to be the better way to play Fire King, unfortunately. It's still, even with one wanted and one Ash, it's still probably better to go through your Snake Eyes lines than to just play pure. Because pure, you probably have a lot more choke points. You have surprisingly, you have less starters, because Volcanics is a starter, but I mean, Ponix, if you're not reading your original Sinful Spoils and you're not running Ash and Poplar, then you have less ways to get to Ponix in the first place, and then everything like a 1.5 to 2 card combo, it's more vulnerable to Droll potentially. Not that I think Droll is necessarily going to be more popular, but yeah, it's just a lower ceiling, and then for a bit more non-engine, but the deck isn't even necessarily that more consistent than Snake Eyes. So we'll put it here. I think Pure Fire King is gonna be okay, and maybe with a so few amount of like Snake Eyes cards, or the Snake Eyes being so limited in Master Duel, then it might push this up a little bit, but not right now, in my opinion. And then, okay, so Snake Eyes and Rescue Ace. Why don't we talk about Pure Snake Eyes? Now, a lot of people are saying Pure Snake Eyes is for some reason like dead or like not tier 1 anymore. I don't really know where that logic is coming from. Like, I know 1 Ash and 1 Wanted, it hurts, but at the same time, you gotta remember, last Duelist Cup, right? We had 3 Ash and no Bonfire. Right now, we have 1 Ash and 4 Bonfire. So technically, mathematically, we have more copies of Ash right now than we did last Duelist Cup, when Snake Eyes was undoubtedly the best deck. And I know that less copies of Wanted means that you're more vulnerable to disruption, because you don't have that, you have less copies of your best extender, but consistency wise, you're still relatively the same. You can make it up by running 3 copies of Popular and stuff like that. But also, we still have access to playing the Kashtira cards, and while I mean they quote unquote hit the Kashtira cards, but really they put Unicorn to 2 when we still have Raidsoft and Fender, so like you still have 4 copies of those extenders, and Ash plus a Unicorn is still plays through any hand trap, even Imperm. So I think Snake Eyes is fine, guys. Like maybe it's not better than Pure Fire, or not, it's better than Pure Fire King. Maybe it's not better than Snake Eyes Fire King, but that is to be seen. And there's definitely more ways to build Pure Snake Eyes to make it more consistent if you even wanted to, even though the deck still has 14 1-card starters, even with 1 Ash and 1 Wanted. So yeah, deck's fine. And speaking of fine, Rescue, a lot of people think Rescue is going to be the best deck. And I'm not quite sure what's going to be the exact best deck. I know Rescue is going to be up there, and yeah, it's obviously with the pre-brand list, Snake Eyes was just far and away the best deck. It wasn't even really close for that matter, but now, you know, the Rescue Ace has a chance. Just, it has sometimes you draw awkward hands, sometimes you draw Popular with your 3 Bonfire, sometimes you draw your traps that you want to set. You know, there's some like weird draws like that, but I mean, these 2 versions also have bricks now too, you know, Fire Kings and trying multiple Flambirds and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe now that Rescue Ace are just positioned to be the best deck, people might actually start running more hate cards specifically towards Rescue Ace, mainly like back row hate, because when Snake Eyes was definitely the best deck, you didn't really want to run too much back row hate because they weren't good playing to the Snake Eyes board, but they are better playing to a Rescue Ace board, so you might see more like Lightning Storm evenly. At the same time, Rescue Ace disruption is not just from the back row. They have monsters too. They have Preventer. They can make Appaloosa. They can make SP. All that stuff. So, you know, just going for board breakers and like back removal isn't necessarily going to help you out too much there as well. But yeah, again, 3 best decks in the format, still probably going to be fire. Master Duel is still on fire. Every format in Yu-Gi-Oh is still on fire, unfortunately. So yeah, Labyrinth. Okay, so I won't say Labyrinth got any like better or worse. I don't think Labyrinth really changed all that much, to be honest. I don't think you got really any new cards from this set even. I will say that the addition of Fire Kings being in the meta probably shoots down Labyrinth a little bit, because that is that is an awful matchup for Labyrinth. Like, pretty much none of your actual Labyrinth effects do anything to Fire King because they just pop cards, and you don't want to pop too many Fire King cards because they still trigger all their effects. So if Fire King is going to be hella popular, then you know, this deck has its the most popular deck in the game being its worst matchup. That might be a problem. Still has some consistency issues because limited pots and semi-limited furniture as well. You know, don't forget that. And the room mechanic can only carry you so far, and there's only 3 the room mechanic. So yeah, solid tier 2 perhaps. Again, we didn't get the black Goat laughs, so no new toys to work with. Kashtira. Kashtira is weird. I still want to consider Kashtira tier 2. It's, in my opinion, the second best shifter deck. Why don't we talk about this again? Why don't we talk about the shifter decks now? So, Vanquish Soul just got a new pack. Maybe it's more affordable for more people now. And Kashtira, these are the best shifter decks in my opinion. Vanquish Soul is a bit more consistent than Kashtira. You're gonna have to jump through a bit of hoops to play Kashtira with just 2 Unicorn and 1 Fender. Can be done. There's Small World, there's Pathfinder, and Kashtira also synergizes well with Gamma. So if you have Gamma, Maxi, and Shifter as hand traps in your deck, then that's like so many powerful hand traps that your concentration of just super powerful single hand traps is more than any other deck. So you don't necessarily have to draw 2 hand traps. You can just draw one of your power, one of hand traps, like Shifter and Gamma, to potentially get you there. And a Rise Hearts, when the Rise Heart hits the field, it still FTKs every deck if they can't get rid of it. So yeah. Why don't we talk about the Cybers decks now, actually? Let's just do all 3 of these at once. So these Cybers decks, they're all like relatively the same deck. I don't think these are necessarily tier 2. Maybe you can argue that they're tier 2, or you can argue that Kashtira is at the top of tier 3 or at the bottom of tier 2. Well, one of these two. Because I don't think there's like a whole tier difference between the Cybers decks and Kashtira. So maybe you can do something like this, like all of these in tier 3 or tier 2, or move Kashtira down a peg and then have these in tier 3. We'll adjust it as we go, but yeah, these are mostly the same type of deck. They just have each have like slightly different strengths and weaknesses. Ignister has the highest ceiling, and it's the least known, so people know how to hand trap it the least. So you can just, if you go first, you can usually just get your combo off and like FTK your opponent. And Mathmech has the most room for non-engine, and it probably plays through hand traps the best because it always gets the circular, but it's very one-dimensional and very people have played against Mathmech for months now. People know how to play against Mathmech. And Salad Mangrade is the deck that is the Cybers deck that's probably actually the best into back row, and namely Floodgates, because it has an in-engine out the Floodgates in Foxy. So there's that. Although it probably plays the worst into hand traps potentially, especially in Nibiru, because Nibiru, you still end on Super Factorial, you can still end on multiple firewalls in Ignister if you get Nibiru, but Salad, it's Raging Phoenix, Roar Pass, or nothing. So your choice there. And now we're on to some more decks. Here, why don't we talk about Branded? So Branded is kind of in a weird spot. It hasn't really done a whole lot, and probably because there's too many hand traps floating around. I think it's still decent. It's still good. You still has Puppet Lock, which I know Master Duel doesn't like playing Branded Puppet Lock, but it's definitely an option there. And maybe with more Fire King and more Rescue Ace and less Pure Snake Eyes, there's going to be less hand traps in the format, and that's going to help Branded, because you just gotta resolve your brand fusion, and if they don't always just in-perm your one way to search brand fusion, then it's better for you there. So Lyrilusc, I'm still playing this here. This is probably not gonna be among the best options for the event, but this is an alternative way to play Snake Eyes now. It's another sub-engine you can put in with Snake Eyes now that you have more room, with Ash being limited and all that stuff. Because the Lyrilusc are level 1, and then Snake Eyes are also level 1, so you can actually go into Recital Starling and then full Lyrilusc combo from there. And you can also use these as level 1 extenders, and you can make Promethean Princess. You can do like the Snake Eyes board and then like have a Ensemble Robin on top of it. And you have extra extenders because you can just summon the level 1 Lyrilusc monsters from your hand as well. So it's probably not the best way to play Snake Eyes, but it's not it's far from the worst way to play Snake Eyes, and you can play pure Lyrilusc, but I don't think. I think the only way you like make Lyrilusc like somewhat competitive is to merge it with Snake Eyes. So yeah, heroes and okay, so the other quote shifter or macro deck. So why don't we throw Exo Sister in here right now? Why don't we all throw these together? So these are all, I think, worse than Kashtira and Vanquish Souls as shifter decks. Lou especially, half as consistent as the Rise Hearts or as a Kashtira somehow. Yeah, there's so many games with Flu where you open Shifter Maxi and then lose the game because your opponent passes turn and you don't have a starter. Yeah, that's happened. I've won a lot of games against Flu just like that. It's never Scoop versus Flu. You never know if they have a playable hand. Yeah, Exo Sister is basically just, in my opinion, it's worse Kashtira. It makes its Xyz does not have a its Xyz is basically a Rise Heart without the macro effect, so you're more reliant on actually drawing the shifter to get the macro effect, and then it's more vulnerable to hand traps. It loses to Maxi, unlike Fluhanderies. It's expensive. Maybe you can argue it's more consistent than Kashtira. That might be the one thing going for it. Although consistent is like up to the eye of the beholder, because if your one card play loses to one hand trap, you know how consistent is that really in actually getting your game plan off. But yeah, and heroes like Dark Law is just the worst of Rise Heart. I'm gonna say that, and like you maybe can play through more hand traps, though you also are way worse into Maxi, which that's another thing. So Kashtira, Vanquish Souls, and Flu are obviously all very good into Maxi. Hero and Exo Sister are really bad into Maxi. So that's also a significant difference between like the shifter and macro decks. TG Glaive TG. So the only reason this is here is because this is a Calamity deck. So I'm representing all the Calamity bozos that got banned. So this is like, you want to put Naturia Horus in here too. You know, all of the other Calamity decks. Yeah, I dropped them all down a tier because they lost their best win condition. TG is still okay. It has, you can use the Wanted engine, although Wanted going to 1 makes it a bit worse, and then Original Sinful Spoils get Salamander, but you don't get the draw if you open with Witch instead of Wanted, and it has a lot of non-engine, and people don't know how to play against this because nobody plays against TGs, but there is a choke point, you know, hit the level 5 synchro that soul charges and you're good. So yeah, and without Calamity it only puts up a couple points of interaction plus non-engine, and that's obviously a lot less threatening. Horus, so this is, I'm just lumping all the Horus decks into one because again the top decks up here aren't going to be playing Horus. It's like the more mid-tier and lower tier decks that are mainly play Horus. So stuff like, I've seen Resonator can play Horus. I've seen Dragon Link Horus builds. There's Horkist. I don't know how good Horkist is. There's Dark World Orcus. Like all of these are just under PK Orcus too, right? Phantom Knight Orcus. All of these are like, they all get helped by Orcus, but again, they're all rogue and like low tier 3-ish decks. Unfortunately, the best way to play Horus is probably Horus Stun, as unfortunate as that is, and that makes me upset. But it is what it is. Maybe if Horus does well, we'll see some more hits and more floodgates. Here's hoping. But yeah. Speaking of stun, still exists. Runick Stun or the Border Patrol. I honestly, I don't see Border much anymore. I just see the fucking Fossil Dyna 5 barrier statue Dogmatica Morganite BS. So I don't even know if Border is even representative stun, modern day stun and master anymore. But floodgates are still legal. There might not be plentiful, but they're still legal. And yeah, Runick deck. So I used to separate all the Runicks, but I just lumped all the Runick decks together now that all the non-stun Runicks here. This represents like Naturia Runick, Runick Spright, Furhire Runick, Bestial Runick. Is there any more? Earthbound Immortal Runick, Generator Runick, Plunder Runick. Am I missing any? All of those I just put under one umbrella of Runick, because there's one problem with Runick that I overlooked from the last pack, and that is the existence of SP Little Knight, specifically with the Master Duel balance. Because Master Duel is the only format where Runick Fountain is at 1. And because of that, SP Little Knight is a massive problem, because now every deck has one generic out in their extra deck that they can make with 2 monsters to just out your Runick Fountain permanently, and then you'll never get it back, because it's limited. And the worst thing is, you can't even use your Runick cards to defend your Runick Fountain against SP Little Knight. Because if you Freezing Curses an SP Little Knight, if they do it right, there'll be another monster on board when they go into SP, so they can just chain SP to your Freezing Curses, and then your Freezing Curses doesn't work on the SP, and your Fountain still gets banished. So like, your best bet is to preemptively, Runick Destruction their extra deck monster. Hopefully they don't have extenders, and praise that they can make a Runick, that they can make an SP, which they still probably can. And yeah, you really have to defend your Fountain. Like, you gotta put up a actual board, which, yeah, you don't have non-engine to stifle SP plays like other decks do, so you really gotta, start a strong turn 1, which is also an issue because Runick decks tend to not run outs to Max C, and while they don't like hard pass the Max C, it's hard to put up real negation under a Max C without giving your opponent too many cards, and in which case you lead yourself open to the SP, and it's just the whole ordeal now trying to play Runick with 1 Fountain. So that's why I'll put it here at the bottom of Rogue. I would barely consider these as like a serious deck, but I'll do it for Josh, I guess. Infernoble Knight. So Infernoble Knight is, I mean, it pays to have a deck that just auto wins going first. So that's what Infernoble Knight is. It has, according to Untap, Infernoble Knight almost has twice the win rate going first as it does going second. So, that's just 2 things about it. And yeah, it's a fire deck. It uses original Sinful Spoils. Again, it's another deck that's hurt by the Wanted hit, because now you have to use more copies of Witch instead of Wanted, which is not as good. Yeah, I mean, FTK going first and a real struggle going second, but if you're into that, go for it. Momento. So I underestimated Momento last format or last pack, because I honestly just didn't know what the Memento cards does, and I see that Memento doesn't have all support, but it does have enough. It does have the good like second waves of support around the same time that TCG got it. So it's actually, I was basing my Memento knowledge off of old TCG data that didn't include the new card that we got from a pack, which is the Karibo card. I don't know what it's called, but it's the Karibo card. That one. So because of that, this deck is actually decent, although it's still. Sometimes the hands are weird. Sometimes you draw hands that lose the 1 hand trap because you don't have that many starters, but it's still okay. I will say that the 5x imperm is a lot worse when you play against something like Fire King, because Fire King can just pop it with stuff like Kieran that aren't on the field, and then it's just like, well, that your main destruction is gone. So I still wouldn't like consider it a serious contender, but although it is still, I would consider Rogue now instead of just like top left unplayable as I thought it was. But it's still decent, and if we get the new support, Dynamorphia. So Dynamorphia is it's like Bizarro Infernoble. Infernoble is the combo version of the deck that wins going first and loses going second. This is Dynamorphia is the trap version of that. Or it used to be, but now it's sometimes Rex Term isn't an auto win anymore, because so many decks just have outs to Rex Term. Like Fire Kings now can just do all their stuff and pop off the field, and then they can hit your Rex Term that way. Tier is we'll get to Tier, I guess, right after, but Tier is very popular, and Super Poly is very popular in Tier, and Rex Term does not really enjoy Super Poly that much. Also, there's Horus cards. Horus means that you can't really get in for damage with your Dynamorphia cards, because then they can just rid your Rexstrom that way. It's kind of weird now. It's not auto win against every matchup anymore. But again, the matchups that it does auto win against, like Snake Eyes or stuff like most of these Cybers decks, it's still gonna feel quite oppressive. So now Tear, and this might be a hot take, but I think Tear is possibly the most overrated deck in Master Duel right now. And that's not because I think Tear is bad. I think Tear is a good deck, great even. You could argue that it's high tier, possibly tier 2 among all of these decks. The thing is, Tear last format prior to the selection pack was the second most played deck in Master Duel. I think Tear is good, but I don't think Tear is the second best deck in Master Duel, right? Especially not now. So yeah, that's just my little rant. Like, I saw Tear absolutely everywhere, and I guess people really love Tear and they want to play with Horus, although I would argue, and I think a lot of the experienced Tear players now realize that Horus is not even the best way to play Tear, because we have this card called Kikolos that does what Zombie Vampire does, but infinitely better, and then you don't have to waste room on more cards that open you up to a weakness to Ash and a weakness to Max C, while cutting off non-engine in a deck that's already somewhat limited to non-engine and all that stuff. But yeah, Tear is good. You could argue Tear all the way up to here. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but it's not top 2 in Master Duel. Okay, let's all relax a little. Chimera. So Chimera, it didn't get the news Chimera cards, didn't get the Master Tell and all that stuff. So I'll still play it in Rogue. It's okay. It's a little underwhelming. It's a little linear, one-dimensional. The branded hits obviously hurt Chimera more than they hurt Brandon, which I always found funny, and the Runick hits also hurt Chimera if you want to play Chimera Runick. It's okay. That's what I'll say. There's not really much more to say about Chimera. It's a pretty straightforward deck. So Life Twin, this is Life Twin Spright. Life Twin Spright got a second Spright Elf back, so that's neat. And yeah, it's a deck. It's just also a very straightforward deck. Just runs a lot of hand traps and a lot of level 2 monsters. And SP Little Knight you can make now with IP, so that's part of your end board now. But yeah, if you want to play Spright, I would say that this is probably the best way to play Spright, which is Live Twins with a bunch of hand traps. That or Tri-Brigade. Sorry. So Tri-Brigade, you actually got a few ways to play Tri-Brigade now. Obviously, you have Tri-Brigade Spright if you still want to play the Nimble package. They're kind of bricks, but they do offer you a pretty high ceiling, higher than you can get with Live Twin Spright. And, Jet is at 2 now, so that helps. You could play Scareclaw Spright, which the main draw of playing Scareclaw Spright is that you can make Baguska, which Baguska with protection from other Link monsters like Double Dragon Lord and Appaloosa is actually really hard to deal with for basically any deck. So try Scareclaw. Tri-Brigade has the high ceiling, but now we have Fire King Tri-Brigade because Garunix can pop Kit from the deck and send it to the grave. And that triggers Kit, obviously, because it's sent to the grave, and then you can access your Tri-Brigade engine that way. So you can actually access your Tri-Brigade engine with the Fire King cards. And then you can add, the Tri-Brigade plays on top of your Fire King end board. So you have like an Appaloosa and a Revolt as well. I don't think that's necessarily the best way to play Tri-Brigade or Fire King for that matter, because that's a lot of engine slots you have to use in a deck that traditionally needs to run a lot of hand traps to help going second, but it is an option now, and you do have multiple ways to play Tri-Brigade, so feel free to experiment with those. Paleozoic. Okay, in reality, on ladder performance, it feels like it's up here. People do not know how to play against Paleozoic. I watch Straw streams. I see all the wheels spinning in people's heads trying to play around Paleozoic. In reality, because this is a World Championship qualifier tier list, and I assume people are going to be better in stage 2, I put it down here because realistically, it feels like Paleozoic should have like a 20% win rate going second. You have no ways to interact with your opponent, and if your opponent builds like any semi-respectable board, and knows how to actually play against Paleozoic, it's so hard to win. Like chain block, nobody chain blocks Paleos, and you just get free materials off it. But in reality, like if they play it properly and you're just off of Paleo bodies, and then you're playing second to the board, it's hard to resolve all your power spells like grass if you even draw it, and like all of your needlebug nests and rollbacks into a bunch of negates and pops and interruptions. Like imagine playing against Salad and your Salad sets up a full field nuke with Pyro Phoenix or Silent Mangrate Rage. Like what are you gonna do as a Paleozoic Painter? Are you gonna pass with 4 cards in hand because you can't set them because you're gonna get popped? Like it's an alright deck. I'll say it's rogue. I also wouldn't consider this a really good deck to climb with because the games take forever, especially if both players know how to play against the deck. So it's maybe I'll put it lower. Just for ranked, it's higher. You can even put this up at a tier higher on ranked. But for this tier list, we'll put it we'll put the 2 Josh decks next to each other. Volcanic. It's another way to play Snake Eyes. I say this is the most interesting one because this also plays with the Horus engine, so you can like Horus mill your Volcanic cards too, and if you get max seed, just FTK your opponent, forehead. That's your anti-max seed line. So yeah, Volcanic. I think it's fine. It's unexplored and not a lot of people play it, so I don't have too much to say about this. But yeah, so okay, Nora. I was wondering where I put this on. Purrely, I think Purrely is still a top deck in Master Duel right now, especially because people aren't really playing Alsta Purrely besides the one of Kurikara and Snake Eyes, which you're probably gonna search that less often now with Ash at 1. But yeah, Purrely is still really good, and until people start specifically playing anti-Purrely cards like Herald of the Abyss or Red Reboot or stuff like that, then Nora is always going to be a bitch. Just having access to Goddess is not enough because Nora can just spin you before you get the Goddess anyways. And you can draw multiple cards, draw like the hand traps on top of the Nora. Also, this deck can play D-Fisher. It can play Rivalry. If you want to play the Floodgate route, you can definitely do that with Purrely. And there's a reason this deck is still has one of the highest win rates on Master Duel because it's good. You can even play Shifter if you want. If you like, I tried. Now that's not for the faint of heart, but Shifter going second is crazy because you can just do all your plays through happiness. You don't need the access. You don't need your Purrely the Exceeds from the Grave if you're going second. So yeah, this deck is always a bitch to play against. Whenever I queue against Purrely going second, I'm always like, please don't have Street, otherwise my Imperm Veiler and sometimes more are all dead and I'm just gonna lose. So yeah. By the way, Street versus Rescue Ace spell traps goes crazy. They all target. Street says no. So now some more blind second decks. Mikanko and 8 axis with Horus 8 axis. So the maybe next tier list I probably won't include 8 axis anymore. Honestly, the problem with 8 axis is Fire King now, and Fire King is the best way to play 8 axis is like blind second board breakers, stuff like Kaiju Slumber and like maybe Dark Hole. By the way, Dark Hole Dragon I know everyone thinks it's a meme, but it's actually an 8 axis card. Imagine trading in your Dark Hole Dragon, then activating Slumber, wiping your opponent's board, and then getting the Dark Hole Dragon back as a free level 8 body. Crazy, right? Not if you're playing against Fire Kings. Your Dark Holes, your Kaiju Slumbers. So it's gonna be a no from them, dog. Yeah, unfortunate. At least you can maybe OTK against Snake Eyes and Rescue Ace. It's gonna be really hard to OTK going second versus Fire King. I'm gonna say that as 8 axis. And Mikanko, the fake going second deck. It's funny. I think Mikanko has been established as the best way to play Mikanko is as a going first deck. God, man, I love modern Yu-Gi-Oh. playing Mikanko as a blind second deck, honestly, it's a trap. Just going first with Mikanko has just outperformed going second with Mikanko since like the entire time it's been in Master Duel. Don't know what to say about that, don't know how to feel about that, but it is what it is. And it can run T-Kaboo, and it has Spirit Walk as a trap suck. So yeah. Monodium is super heavy. Okay, so these are kind of weird. I think Monodium is also pretty decent, as long as you don't get maxied. Just don't get maxied. Which, if you're going second, you actually don't care about maxi as much because you're just gonna try to kill your opponent through your maxi. Baron is still legal, so you still have that. And yeah, it has Visa, Samshar, all that stuff. It's decent. Probably the best wombo combo deck in Master Duel right now. Although that type of deck with not as much non-engine and just trying to play all gas isn't necessarily even probably the best way to play Master Duel right now. Especially when you go second and you don't have hand traps to interact with your opponent. But yeah, super heavy samurai. So Calamity was banned. It's not that big of a deal for super heavy. I mean, it kind of is. It's like it was like your best end board through max seed, because if you get max seed, then you're probably better off trying to Calamity lock your opponent than just passing if you don't have that many hand traps. But you can still set up FTK boards with super heavy, whether it's like pseudo FTKs or actual FTKs. But man, do you not have starters anymore? Actually, I don't know why I put it up here. Man, having a super heavy samurai is like as consistent as Flu is right now. That's something it feels like. You can combine super heavy with other engines though to like make up for it, unlike Flu. So it's all right. Super heavy samurai feels like it has the biggest discrepancy between hands you can draw. You either draw like pre-hit because all the cards aren't banned, they're just limited or semi-limited, so you can draw like Wagon, Wakaushi, Soul Piercer, and then literally your opponent can't do nothing to you. Or you can draw Soul Peacemaker as your only play, normal summon, get Inferned, pass. And yeah, neither of them feels great depending on which player you are, but yeah, I would not trust the consistency of Super Heavy Samurai now, heading into like an event like World Championship, your qualifiers. But maybe if you're insane, if you can brew up like some semi-consistent Super Heavy Samurai hybrid, like I've seen Horus Super Heavy Samurai. I guess that works. I'm not gonna call this deck like dead. There's certainly a way to build this to make it consistent. I just don't know the best way to do it this. And no, it is not Sword Soul. Okay, I'm putting Sword Soul here. Okay, you are not grinding the World Championship qualifiers with Sword Soul. Okay, for ladder this would be Rogue, but no, you are not taking Sword Soul to stage 2 of the event. Like, come on now. Unchained. Unchained. This deck has just underperformed its entire existence in Master Duel. Nobody can really explain why, but I don't see it getting any better now that there's a deck that doesn't care about destruction-based interaction with Fire Kings. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't see the meta getting better for Unchained anytime soon. Spright. So these are the rest of the Spright builds that aren't Tri-Brigade, Alive Twin, or Runick, I guess. I don't think any other Spright builds is really that good. Like, Adventure Spright is okay, but it has like, it's a Spright deck that doesn't have the most room for non-engine, which is ironic because that's like the best part of Spright a lot of times. But yeah, I don't think any of the other Spright builds are really that great. Like Purrely Spright, just play Purrely, you'll be better off. Yeah, you can try to like piggyback off of like a better deck like Snake Eyes or something, but then you're just playing a worse version of that deck. Like, you're not really, the sprites aren't adding too much. You're just playing like a better Spright deck, but you're playing a worse version of like Purrely or a worse version of Snake Eyes. So yeah, if you want to play Spright, I would say stick to these two. And okay, so this is Dragon League. unfortunately, right now, Bystials aren't in the best position in the meta. Specifically, if the two best decks are Rescue Ace and Fire King, then unfortunately, Bystials aren't great against either of those, and that's the biggest draw of Dragon Link, is in a format where Bystials are good, Dragon Link is really good because it makes use of Bystials the best, but if Bystials aren't projected to be that great, again, look at all the decks up here, like, of these top 7 decks that I put up here, only 2 of them are really hurt really badly by Bystials, and 4 of them, like, almost actively don't care, and pure Snake Eyes only marginally gets affected by Bystial. Like, you can sometimes Bystial away the Ivy Masquerade if they don't make an Appaloosa before that. But yeah, so because of that, the Dragon Link doesn't really have too much going for it right now, unfortunately, so I'm putting it down a peg. Yeah. Hurts to say, but this is not the format for Dragon Link, and this is not the World Championship qualifier for Dragon Link. So yeah, there's damn, how long have I been yapping for? Jesus Christ. If you stick for this long, you're a legend. Again, let me know any disagreements, let me know any cards, any decks you want included in here. And yeah, good luck with the World Championship qualifier. Or if you're just going for gems, you know, good luck getting the gems. Good luck getting to Duelist level 19 or Duelist level max, whatever your goal is.